Tracking in After Effects is, in my opinion, I don't know, a little bit of a pain in the butt, because you can't really just adjust stuff regarding to the world scale, and the whole interface in 3D navigation is pretty janky in After Effects, in my opinion. So what I have here is a shot. I filmed this one on my camera. It's a Blackmagic Pocket 4K. If I scrub through, as you can see, it's just a basic movement, and I want to track something onto here, maybe a figure or a cup of coffee. I can show you the final result. If I jump here into a DaVinci Resolve and I put in this shot, this is basically the same shot, a little bit of color grading here, and what I did is I put on a cup of coffee, and I did this one in Cinema 4D. Of course, I did the compositing then afterwards in After Effects, but the whole tracking was done in Cinema 4D. So back to After Effects. The regular way you would do this is you put on a camera tracker. Okay, put on a camera tracker and click on analyze the track and stuff like that, and it analyzes it. And yeah, if I click on it, I can see you got these tracking points here. In this case, it's a little bit special because, or it's a little bit problematic maybe, because I have this really dirty iPad here with all these smudges and stuff like that. But it's interesting because it's reflecting the window, and you don't want to track for your 3D track. You don't want to track anything that is related to reflections of water or glass or stuff like that, because it will completely mess up your 3D track. So what I already did is I deleted those tracking points that appeared here, and then I clicked on. Basically, what I did then is I created a camera by right-clicking. If I just hover over with the mouse, you can see those points here, and you can right-click now and say, okay, let me just delete those 3 here, because I already created a camera. So what I can do now is I can go ahead, right-click, and say, okay, create maybe a null and a camera, or let's say a plane and a camera. Okay, and I created this plane. And yeah, it's sticking fine, actually, but we don't have anything, we don't have any control about how big is the scene and how is actually the orientation of the camera and stuff like that. We could change that in After Effects, of course, by rotating it and stuff like that, but it's pretty janky, in my opinion. So better way to do this is in Cinema 4D. In Cinema 4D, I already prepared this one. Let me create a new project and delete this window. We can go ahead and go to motion tracker layout. It says here double click to create a motion tracker object. First of all, make sure that your project settings are correct. Right now I am on 25 frames, and I know that I shot this one on 24, and I already exported this image sequence in 24 frames. So everything should be in the same size and same frame rate. So put this one into 24 frames, double click here, it created a motion tracker, and also now it says double click to select footage. Double click, and I can select my exported footage, and it created this background. So right now it looks pretty pixelated. This is because in the footage settings of the motion tracker, the resampling is set to 33%, which saves on your machine. Basically, it runs smoother, but we want to take this up to 100%. Now it's sharp. So next step is go to 2D tracking and click on auto track, and it will start to processing. It will automatically put some points here and start to do its thing. I will be back in a second. Okay, we're back, and as you can see, it created those points. I scrub through, everything should be sticking fine onto those objects. What we can see here is that we have, this is the problem that I discussed before, that we have some points on this screen, and we don't want that because these will be bad for our tracking results. So what we can do now is we can just select those points and just delete them. This one also. Scrub through if there are any more points. Yeah, these 2 points, I think we don't need those. Here. This one. But now we are basically good to go. And now we can go to 3D Solve. We can add some additional data here. I'm not sure if this is possible in After Effects, but here it is possible, which is very good. Actually, if you don't know anything about the camera that you've shot into, just leave it at unknown but constant. But if you know certain stuff about your camera, you can put those values in here. And I know that I shot this one on a 14mm lens. And the sensor size, since this is a micro four thirds camera, the Pocket 4K, I'm not quite sure, but it gave me good results. I think it's 20mm in the sensor size. Okay, then I can just click on Run 3D Solver. And I will be back in a few seconds. So now it's finished. Let's take a look at those points. If I uncheck Motion Tracker, here we can see those 3D points in space. And if I scrub through, yeah, everything looks good. First thing I notice is that the perspective is off. If you take a look at the right view, as you can see, okay, this should be flat. This should be laying flat on the floor. The camera should be up here facing downwards. So there's an easy way to fix that. Select the motion tracker, right click, go to tracker tags and add in a planar constraint. And this way we can define, okay, which part of the footage is the flat part, okay, so to say. So we can take these three handles and just align them onto those tracker marks, and it immediately jumped. Now it's laying flat on the floor and the camera is facing downwards. This is great. This is what we want. Next step is we want to define the center of the world. Right now the camera is in the center of the world, but we want something here to be the center of the world, which is also done very easily by right-clicking. Go to tracker tags and put in a position constraint. I created this little dot, and now I can say, okay, which of these points should be in the center? And I think I'm going to choose this one. Just going to snap this, and it immediately jumps up. See? Next thing, and the last thing to fix, is the general scale of the scene. So if I put in a cube, as you can see, okay, it already looks good perspective-wise, but it's too big. This cube has this is 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters, which is not the real scale of this whole scene. But this can be fixed also very easily by right-clicking and go to tracker tags and click on vector constraint, and it creates this line. So I can again snap it onto, let's say, this point, I don't know, and this point. So it gives me a few options. We could change the axis, for example, which direction we are looking on it. But also it says here we have this length option. So right now it's set to unknown, but we could probably guess how long this one is. So I just change it to known. And right now it's huge because it says, okay, it's this length here is 1000 centimeters. That's not actually the case. I think it's more like, I don't know, 30 centimeters. Let's put it to 30, and it shrinks the whole scene down. Let's take a look. So now if I create, let's say, a sphere, this sphere has a radius of 100 centimeters. If I shrink it down to, let's say, I don't know, let's shrink it down to 5 centimeters in radius. Yeah, which looks pretty good to me. So now if I scrub through, everything is fine. Now, if we are happy with this, if we just need the camera data and all those tracking points, if we say, okay, I'm going to do some text maybe or stuff like that. Yeah, what we could do now, and I want to do this in After Effects, for example. And what we could do now is just go ahead and export or save the scene and import it and open it in After Effects. So we need to select any reference point basically where we want to add some text, and maybe we want some text appear here at the center where we defined the world center. Okay, I selected this one. If I click on S, it will open up my unfold everything, and I will see this point. So if I go here and click on, if I right click here and say, I go to render tags, go to external compositing, we need this tag to be that, so that After Effects knows, okay, this is a point where I can extract. Okay, and I'm gonna save this file now. Save it as tracking to AE. Okay, in After Effects, I can go ahead and double click and import. No, this is the wrong one. To AE. Okay. And it says it has 25 frames. This is because, again, be careful, because we set the project settings to 24, but in the render settings, set to 25, set this one to 24. I think then it should work. Let's see. Just always make sure that your resolution and your frame rate and stuff is consistent. Otherwise you will run into problems. Tracking to AE. Let's see. Yeah, now it's 24. This is good. And now I can drag this file and put it onto a comp. Yeah, and we just see those points. And now if I want to extract, I can extract it. And I have the soft camera and this null object. Great, 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 great. We copy that one, go into our shot I created. I think I can use this one. And just put it in. So now I have this null object that is perfectly tracked. And I can, let's say I can, can add basically anything here. I could say, okay, test, make it 3D, and copy the position. It's much too big right now. Scale it down. Something like that. And it is tracked onto this point, which is good. Let's change the position a little bit. If this is what you want. Anyways, what I did is I created a cup of coffee in here and exported it with Octane. For my example, I used this cup here, but what we can do, let's take this one, put it in here. Okay. It always spawns at the center, which is nice. And we don't need that one. Create a plane, scale it down, something like that. This will cast shadows then, or it's acting as, no, it's not casting, it's catching the shadows. This is a shadow catcher for the coffee. Go to footage now of the motion tracker. We want to create a background image. Change the layout to startup. I can put this onto the plane. Change the projection to camera mapping. We need to define a camera. The camera is casting now. I want the camera to cast the texture onto this plane. Okay, so but it needs a camera, of course. Here, the camera is the soft camera, and the film aspect is obviously not 4:3 but 16:9. Okay, and that's it basically. Now if I open Octane, get a black cup of coffee. This is because there is something with the texture going on. Let's convert this one. Still black. It's because here in the original material, it's not the color that is driving the diffuse, but it's the reflectance channel. Here is the texture. So I need this one. I need this path. Put in an image texture. No. But I can just paste it in and put in to the diffuse. Okay, that's it. So the rest is basically lighting and stuff like that. I think I have a good HDRI. Just an Octane Sky. Put it here. Okay. It matches the whole direction and stuff like that. So right now we can see that the background we are seeing is the HDRI. We don't want that. This is because in the settings of Octane we can change this one to alpha channel, and now we can see the background. Okay. Next step would be to change the material on the plane. Right now it's a standard material, a standard C4D material, but I want to change this one into an Octane material as well. So I don't want to change it for the background. Yeah. So I just duplicate the material. Okay, put it onto the plane, and this material I can convert. And it did something that is not correct. This is because in this material, in the image texture, we have to go to animation. And first of all, the movie frame rate is not 25 but 24, and the movie start frame and end frame right now it's set to 0. There's no movement at all. If I just scrub through, as you can see, it's staying the same basically, the texture on this plane. So, but I can calculate it now. Now it says, okay, movie end frame is 497, which is correct, and now it should be moving and perfectly aligning, which it does. As you can see, we have some chunky lines here, yeah, on the plane. This is because the plane needs more segments. Right now it has 10, but you will see it will straighten up. And here, and now it's good. Now we want to export it. Okay. First of all, what we could also do is change where. Right now we have the render kernel of Octane is set to direct lighting. Maybe we can change it to path tracing, which gives us better results. Maybe lower the max samples to 500. We don't need that much diffuse. And also specular depth, we don't need that much. We don't have any scattering. We can see the background again of the HDRI. This is because we need to check on the alpha channel. Also, what we want is static noise. I will come to that in a second, why we want that. And now we want to export it. But I only want to export the mug and the reflection it's casting onto this plane. But I want to have the plane to affect the reflection of the mug. Because let's say if I change this one to metallic, okay? So right now it's looking like that. Because the roughness is pretty high. The plane has this texture. The plane has the texture of the background. So basically this is, and it's casting the reflection onto the mug. If I change it back to glossy, you won't see that much, but it's there. It's there. The texture reflects onto the mug, and we want to keep that. So the point why I'm saying this is because we could also go ahead and put this one here as a shadow catcher. Yeah. So, which gives me some weird results. Yeah. First of all, because of the HDRI, but it doesn't reflect that texture onto the mug, but we want to have that. So disable the shadow catcher. There is a workaround, and it's pretty clever. We could go ahead. What we have to do is we have to go to the mug, right click, go to C4D Octane, and put on an Octane object tag. And in the object layer, we want to say, okay, this mug here, we will give it a layer ID of 2. Because everything by default has a layer of 1. So we want to separate the mug from everything else. Okay, we want to separate especially from the plane, because we don't have anything more in this scene. Okay, if this makes sense. So then we go to the render settings. First of all, change this one to Octane Render. And we want to say preview range here. Go to Octane Render and enable render passes. And in the render passes, we have this section called a render layer. If you enable this one, and right now it's already set to 2. So it will only show the mug without the plane. Check this out. See? Okay. But it reflects the plane. See if I did, see that? If this makes sense. Let's zoom in here. Look at this one here. If I enable, it's gone. This, what you can see here, this is the reflection of the HDRI. But this is the reflection basically of the table. So, but what about the shadows and stuff like that? Shadows are gone now. I can't see them. So there is another thing here. You can take, it's called black shadows or layer shadows. I always tick black shadows. I think layer shadows is new. I'm not sure. But black shadows, if I tick that one, you can see here, you have this main down here, and then you have this shadow thing. If I click on this, I can see, okay, my shadows are back. But this is only the shadows with the alpha channel. It's not the plane, but it's only the shadow that is casting, that the mug is casting onto the plane, if that makes any sense what I'm talking here. So, and that's good. That's what we want. We could also enable reflections. If I just enable this one, you can see this is the reflection of the mug onto the plane. This makes sense if you want to do something onto, let's say you have I don't know, a lake or something, and you put on an object that is floating above the lake, for example. Yeah. This object would cast a reflection onto the lake. Yeah, and you could use that for that and just comp it on them. Okay, but in this case we don't need any reflections, so just disable them. So these are just the two things we need. Then we have to say, okay, which format. You could use EXR, of course. This is the best one in a 32-bit. But in my case, I did it in PNG and chose a 16-bit. Also checked on folders, so it creates some folders, and defined the path and just gave it a render without clicking on to. You don't have to click on save here because it already saves the render passes. Okay, it will give you a warning, but you can ignore that. It will create a folder. So here's the folder. If I go to C4D here, yeah, these are the two folders. What I forgot to say is I used a denoised pass, and this is why I chose a static noise at the first place, because you want to use static noise when using animation stuff with the denoiser. So I checked this one also, the denoised beauty. You can use a little bit of a lower sampling. I think I used 250 samples for the reference shot, which was sufficient. Yeah. Anyways, you get these two folders, here and here, and then you can comp them together in After Effects. This is the original shot. Okay, then I imported those two image sequences, the denoised coffee cup and the shadow of the coffee cup. And then I did also some color correction on top of it. I think I used some grain on it and did a little bit of color correction. And that's the result then, basically. And it's perfectly sticking onto the desk. Yeah. So to sum it up, if you have C4D and you want to track something, use C4D for tracking, because I think it's much more versatile and it's much more easy to do. You could also do some 2D tracking and stuff like that, but especially for 3D tracking, in my opinion, it's very good. Of course, there are some other programs you could do tracking with Mocha and also PF Track, I think. There's some different other trackers around. But again, if you have it, why don't you use it? So that's my short introduction to tracking in Cinema 4D. I hope you had a great time, and yeah, if so, give me a like, follow me, and I will see you next time. Bye.